Welcome to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
Andrew McGarrity, welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be back.
Hey,
Always good to be back.
It is good to be. It's good to have you back, man. You're one of our all-time most popular repeat guests.
You picked a lousy popular guest.
All right. I think this is the third time you're back on
Is
here.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Well, I appreciate it, man.
Privilege is mine.
Yeah. So what I was thinking today was, I'd love to hear a little bit. I'd love to hear an update on BrightTrip.
Oh, sure.
And then I'd love to hear some tips and tricks and how to stay sane when you're traveling with kids. I know you know something about that.
Yes.
And then I'd love to hear a walkthrough of founding a startup company. And startup is in like, I don't even know how to exactly like what the term is, but I'm thinking like a startup in the tech space where you have an idea and then you raise capital and you found it and you run it for 3, 5, 7 years and then the plan is to sell it. Like kind of juxtaposing that against what I would at least used to think of a more traditional startup where it's like you bootstrap it and you make some cash flow and, you know, what was more popular, I guess, 20 years ago. And now maybe the startup capital in the more tech space is actually the more common or popular way to do it. I'm not really sure. So anyhow, that's what I was thinking for our time today.
I love it.
Sound good?
Let's dive in.
All right. So how's BrightTrip going?
Oh, BrightTrip's going really well. Even in the middle of a pandemic, BrightTrip is doing well. A travel brand.
Which is so shocking.
Is doing well. I know. Yeah, I think it's interesting too. So I think what's interesting is we found that our skills-based courses, so BrightTrip offers video-based travel courses.
Yep.
So, and we kind of break our courses down into two types. One is like a skills-based type course, and then the other is a destination-based course.
Okay. And you know what? Can you just actually give us let us know what BrightTrip is?
Sure.
And a little bit on who you are first, and then we can jump in. That way,
Sure.
if people are coming in fresh and don't know anything about BrightTrip,
Totally.
let's hear about that first, and then let's hear the update.
Absolutely. So BrightTrip is a travel brand, and our mission is to help people travel smarter. So we, unlike traditional travel content, which is very authoritative in voice and kind of just gives this litany of recommendations and reviews, BrightTrip is really not that. We are trying to teach people how to experience a place with confidence and help you understand and arm you with the knowledge and the context about that place so you can really enjoy the place and get the most out of your trip when you get there. So that is BrightTrip, and we really focused on video. We think video is a really great way to visually communicate knowledge, especially about travel and travel concepts. So,
and is that because of where you saw where things are at, just kind of in our moment? People are all about video now, and if you can watch something on YouTube as opposed to reading a book, like that's just where you saw the opportunities lie? Is that why you went video?
Yeah, there was a bit of a white space when it came to. So there's a lot of inspirational content out there. A lot of it's on YouTube, especially video, inspirational video content. But we really wanted to get down to the tactics of how to travel and how to travel smart and how to arm yourself with knowledge. And we really wanted to use video to do that. So we were trying to not be less inspirational and more video centric, and that was kind of like the white space that we identified.
I see. Yes. Okay.
Because there's lots of books and lots of blogs. And you can spend a lot of time on the internet searching, but having a nice curated course that is a education on a destination is really valuable.
Yes.
As opposed to just spending a lot of time trying to look for those.
Yeah, and what is I know? So we've touched on this before, but for those new here, they may not. So if they may not kind of know the differences here, but BrightTrip versus say just your average video on YouTube or your average blog. Why would they pay a little bit for your course as opposed to just watching a popular video on YouTube about visiting Chiang Mai, Thailand or something like that?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a meaty course. So it is a lot of content and it's heavily scripted and it's the aesthetics of the video are really, we invested a lot in the aesthetics. So it's really fun to watch. And at the end of the course, we feel like you will be prepared to experience that place. So we think about BrightTrip as the place you go to prepare for a trip. So we can prepare you with knowledge with our video-based courses. We also have gear recommendations. So part of experience a place is having the right gear to experience it. So we think about BrightTrip as the place you go to prepare for a trip. And we use video to do that.
Yeah, I love it. So it's going well. Let's go back to the update.
Yeah. We actually just published a course on how to travel during a pandemic. And that's selling well, of course, in the middle of a pandemic. Yeah, so it really is. I think a lot of folks are just taking the skills-based courses, kind of eager to travel again. Our customers, I talked to about a half dozen customers last week, and they're just avid travelers ready to travel again and just honing their skills and getting ready to, one of our courses, for example, is how to document your trip when you go on it. So they're learning how to document their trip and things like that, how to travel solo. What do I need to prepare to take a solo travel, maybe as a female?
Yep.
So yeah, so we're selling courses every day.
That's so great. And do you think you're doing good because you just have a good business model with good people, with great content, and it's just going to do well despite a pandemic? Or if there was no pandemic, would you just be like doing so much better? That's really what I'm after, I guess.
Yeah. Man, I don't even know the answer to that question. So let me tell you our strategy. Our strategy is to beef up our library, have lots of destinations and lots of skills, travel skills in our course library. So when travel returns, we feel like we can be that place. So I think about it this way, actually. So the more complex travel becomes, the more valuable a BrightTrip course ought to become. So the more complex and the more travel needs demystification, whatever the word, more you need to demystify your travel, the more valuable a BrightTrip course is, we think, because it is that education for that trip you're about to take. And the place, if you really want to prepare for that trip, BrightTrip is the place to do it. And it's a lot of fun taking the courses anyways.
Yeah. So you think if there was no pandemic, do you think you'd be doing as well, right? You'd have no reason to believe that if there was no pandemic, you wouldn't be doing as well, correct?
Sure. Yeah. I think we'd probably be growing faster.
Oh, you think you would be?
I think we'd probably be growing faster.
Okay.
And I think, but there's part of me too, like we've attracted a lot of talent because of the pandemic. So a lot of YouTubers who have mostly done, vlogs or, just short videos on their YouTube channels, they're being drawn to this course concept, and they are making courses for BrightTrip, and we're sharing the revenue. So they contribute a course. We don't spend we're not investing any in making a course, and they are on their own dime creating the course and contributing it, hosting it on BrightTrip, and then we're sharing revenue in some model. So that's been great too, because I think some of these YouTubers have their vlogs and their blogs have dropped in traffic. So it's provided us an opportunity to acquire talent. So that's been great too. So and also their networks are being driven to BrightTrip as well, which means acquiring a customer is less expensive for us to acquire a customer because their followers are being drawn to BrightTrip or being directed to BrightTrip.
And do you think that you wouldn't have been able to get all of them to come do courses for you that you have been able to if there was no pandemic? They'd be busy doing their own thing. Is that kind of what you're?
I think they would have had more opportunities.
I see.
More companies would approach them for branding deal or for videos about their products.
Yep.
So I think they just would have more opportunities. So we would have been competing for their attention.
Yep.
More.
Okay. So. What are some of your best-selling courses?
So that, like I mentioned earlier, how to document your trip is one of our best sellers.
Really?
Yeah. So we have, I think, because we are a very creative community, a lot of folks are drawn to those creative courses.
Sure.
So that's been good. But they all have been selling well. Tokyo is selling really well because that is a very large, complex city. So that is a nervous place to travel anyways. So
for context, how long is that course and how much people pay for it?
So that is a $30 course, I believe, and it is about an hour's worth of content.
Wow.
So I think it's
great deal.
14 chapters. Usually about three lessons in each chapter, 4 lessons in each chapter. It covers everything from transportation in Tokyo to how to get in on the ramen scene, and how to travel there with kids, and what are the demystifying the Tokyo shrines and what those mean. So so when you get there, it also tells you the areas of the city. So it like breaks down with animation what cities or what parts of the city are what, and what characterizes those parts of the city. And what are the borders, and why would you stay here versus there? So it just really from A to Z, it's just a lot of valuable information that you can kind of learn visually through that course.
Well, and if you're going to visit Tokyo from almost anywhere in the world, I mean, $30 in 1 hour of your time that could have an impact on how your entire trip goes and your perception of it and enjoyment of it and the memories to retain. I mean, that's the best $30 you're going to spend going to Tokyo, right?
The plane ticket alone is what, $2,000 to Tokyo. So
it
is. We think it's a really worthwhile investment to prepare for that trip, so you can really get the most out of it.
Okay. What were some of your favorite courses?
Man, I love the travel with kids course.
Oh yeah,
because I have kids and travel a lot with kids. So that has also been. We think about like we're with our courses, we're solving a problem. So Tokyo, large city, complex city. the transportation system is complex, on and on. That is a real problem to solve. So traveling with kids is also a real problem.
Yeah.
Because it's intimidating, it's risky, it's high stakes, it's a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So our travel with kids course is probably one of my favorites because really I learned a lot from it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, my co-founders created the course. And they
Okay.
also travel with their kids.
Yep.
And so I just learned from them. And
Yeah.
really, I think my next trip with kids will be much smoother.
Yeah,
because
I'm
of it.
sure. Well, let's come back around to traveling with kids because obviously that's something we want to talk about. But are you exceeding your revenue goals so far in the pandemic or off by a little? Like, you comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, I think we're about at pace
Okay.
where we are with where we expected to be. We hope to be growing it probably a little bit faster.
Mhm.
So it's not really about revenue; it's more about the growth rate.
Sure.
So we really wanted to be growing faster, of course. But
Okay.
But I think you don't know until you do it. Of course, it just takes time to build a business. I mean,
Mhm.
any business owner, it just takes time to build a business, and it takes longer, and it costs more than you ever thought it might.
Sure.
It's
Yeah.
the rule of thumb, right? So not that it necessarily costs more for us, but it just takes a long time.
Yep.
And there's I guess points of opportunity that we double down on that we didn't think that we might.
Mm.
So there's creators, for example, attracting these really talented creators with large subscribers and large networks and large followings. That has been one of our key priorities these past 6 to 8 months
Mhm.
and in the future that we think will make a big difference from a customer standpoint and also from just the value of the content
Yes.
because they have a certain niche and a certain expertise.
Absolutely. Yeah. Is your customers in America traveling out internationally, or are your customers people that live already internationally and are just traveling either domestically in the country they live or internationally from there?
Of these dozen or so customers I talked to last week, what I noticed is you're not going to stop them from traveling. The pandemic is not going to stop these people from traveling. So I think 3 out of the 12 were abroad, maybe 4. 4
They
abroad.
live abroad.
They were abroad because they wanted to be abroad.
Okay.
So their base is the United States.
Okay.
And
Home was America, but
yep,
they're living abroad.
They chose
Okay.
to. I think one fellow just decided to stay in Costa Rica because he enjoyed it. So
Okay.
he just said, "I'm not going to come back. I'm just going to stay there until after the pandemic and then
Sure.
come back or whatever." Another family is a homeschool family, so they travel all the time, and they weren't going to let a pandemic stop them. So I
Okay.
think it's just this. There is this, I guess, subset of travelers, I guess,
Mhm.
or of tourism, or of I don't know, people that are just avid travelers.
Yeah.
So they, I think what I noticed and was encouraging is like there's a subset of really avid travelers, and yeah, I think they weren't going to let it stop
They're
them.
still at it.
It's still
Yeah.
at it. Yeah.
So you're kind of who you're selling courses to, or do they mostly live in America interested in traveling abroad, or do they happen to live in France and are going to buy your course when visiting Tokyo? Like that's
Yeah, so we thought that it would be, well, it's mostly U.S., mostly Americans.
Okay.
Is our primary market, but we really have customers from 120 countries right now. I think I did the math the other day. So we have a lot of customers from all over the world that have bought a course, but primarily U.S. and Canada, some in Mexico and Europe, UK and Europe.
And by nature of these courses being in English, that's of course going to sort of
Right.
Lend itself to.
Although we have
the
some creators
demographic.
creating courses right now in Spanish and in Portuguese.
Ooh, very cool.
I think one in German. There's somebody in Poland creating a course right now. So there's just
Yeah.
So we think that we have a chance to become this travel content marketplace that
Mhm.
is drawing people from all over the world.
Yep.
To those creators to learn about the topics or skills or destinations.
Yeah. The guy living in Costa. Well, first of all, what were you doing on the phone with these travelers? They had bought your course, of course. Obviously. Are you just calling them up to see, hey, why'd you buy it? How did it go? What'd you think?
Yeah.
Or were you getting involved with like customer service type stuff?
No, yes, I think talking to customers is so important.
Yeah, I
because
agree.
So there's this one woman. She's French. Her name is Camille. She bought a course on Tokyo and solo travel. So she bought our Tokyo Demystified course and our solo travel course, how to travel solo course. So I said, why did you purchase those 2 courses? And she said, hey, yeah, Tokyo is large and expensive to get there, and I just wanted to make sure I was prepared. So that kind of proved out a concept for us that okay, that that notion of complexity and preparation. That was there was a nexus there. There's a real problem to solve there. So that was great. And she was a single female traveling to this place. So she wanted to make sure that she was safe. She was street smart. She understood, the various solo travel dynamics that come up. So anyway, it proved out some concepts that, because we were even thinking about, like, what is a travel course? There's no such thing as a travel course, right? BrightTrip created the notion of a travel course. So is that resonating? Why did you buy a course? All these questions that you have from customers, you can learn so much. And I think I try to talk to as many as I can because they teach me something all the time, like something I wouldn't have thought about. Like our travel with kids course, one woman's like, I travel in the car a lot with my kids. We focused on airplanes. So we probably should add a chapter about traveling in the car with kids, especially post-pandemic or post-COVID. So,
well, the reason I asked was I think, I don't know if this is on the podcast, how I built this, but the founders of Airbnb were like on the West Coast, and one of their bigger investors is like, we're your customers. And they're like, well, we have a lot of customers in New York City, actually. And the investor's like, well, what are you doing on the West Coast? Like, you need to go to New York City where your customers are. Like, and the idea was basically to go small before you scale. So that's what you're doing with talking to these customers. Do you just randomly look through a list of customers and then just email someone, or do you cold call them, or what do you do?
I looked who was enrolled in various courses. So I took the enrollments.
Oh, okay.
I looked at the enrollments of the courses and emailed, a couple dozen and got, about a dozen to respond.
Just said like, hey, I'm Andrew. I found a BrightTrip. Would you be interested in spending a few minutes talking with me about why you bought the course or whatever?
Precisely. Yep.
Very cool.
Yeah. What was so I wanted to understand in particular, what was the customer journey? What was the problem that we were solving for them? Did the product meet expectations? Was the price point right? Those type of questions. And then things like, did you have any technical problems on the site? Was there any hiccups? What could we improve? Things like that we could learn. And my co-founders do a great job of this too. They have a much larger following on YouTube than I do, of course, and on Instagram. But they did a great job of crowdsourcing. Like, hey, what do you want us to make next? What course would you like for us to make next? Or what problem did we solve for you with this course, and things like that. So, how
did the majority of the people you talk to, how do they find you? Do you do Google paid ads? And how are you getting these customers?
Yeah, so all of our traffic has been organic up to this point, has been unpaid, I guess.
Okay.
And it's mostly because of my co-founders' large network.
Okay.
So my co-founders are Johnny and Iz Harris. They used to work for Vox, and they have a large following of subscribers on YouTube. So they've been dropping little hints there and here and there. So we've really acquired all our customers through their network.
And they're still doing their YouTube channel stuff?
They are. Yep.
Okay. And as they do that, they're kind of dropping hints about BrightTrip and bringing in people there.
Exactly. So
I see.
Yeah, they're like kind of their channels have their own kind of theme or a certain point to it. And BrightTrip is very different, but they all know that they're very involved in BrightTrip. And now BrightTrip has its own YouTube channel. Which all your listeners should go subscribe.
Absolutely.
It's a lot of great content.
It's just BrightTrip on YouTube.
BrightTrip. Yep.
Okay.
Search for BrightTrip. Can't miss it. Big orange B.
Cool.
Click on it.
I'm going to do that. Yeah, BrightTrip.
There's a lot of great content too. So we just published a video, or about to publish a video, about the New York subway. How did it come to be? What's its history? And then how do I get around on the New York subway? Like, it is such a complex system. How do I do it right? So that is, and it's also, we broke down the New York map, because why is Manhattan the way it is? Why is it, what's the grid system, and what does it mean, and what are the A streets, and what are the Soho, all these. So those kind of very BrightTrip topics, we're using that as a customer acquisition strategy and driving traffic to our actual courses.
Okay, so what you just said,
funnels.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I was just curious, but I think you answered the question. What you were describing about New York City and the maps and the subway, that's free on YouTube.
Correct, it's free.
And you want that to go out and be appreciated by the YouTube algorithm gods, as it were, and bring people into your YouTube channel. Now they're finding out about your BrightTrip courses and so forth.
Yeah, so they're finding value in us explaining this map of New York.
Yeah.
And then why wouldn't I just go take the whole course on New York Demystified?
Yes. Okay. Well, if you stumble across any great tips on building YouTube channel, then let us know. That's something Andrew and I are learning everything we can about right now.
It's a science in
podcast
itself.
is on
luckily,
YouTube as well.
Johnny and Iz, my co-founders, they're just masters at building communities online.
I bet they are.
So
YouTube in particular.
YouTube.
Yeah.
So I think they have Johnny's up to almost 1 million subscribers. Johnny mentioned that he created we started a BrightTrip and we gained 20,000 subscribers in a week.
No.
So
Wow.
yeah,
Good for you, man.
I think it just takes
That's great.
somebody who's built communities before.
Well, yeah, but it's also so. It just shows how strategic it was for you to get Johnny and Iz as co-founders, because
Absolutely.
if you're not spending money to acquire customers right now, that's a big deal.
It's all
That is a
it's all
really
unpaid.
big deal.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So we are waiting for. So we're raising capital to scale. So we think that
Okay.
we found a repeatable process,
Mm-hmm.
and if we were to apply capital to it, like spend, $1 to acquire 3 customers or
Yep.
whatever the ad ratio is, we can really. We feel like we've learned so much that we did it carefully too. Also, so we feel like we had a big opportunity with these 1 million or so followers of
Mhm.
Johnny and Iz, and we tested it. We went carefully. We still haven't even announced full scale on their channels that BrightTrip exists. We have not done a
Okay.
dedicated video. So
Okay.
we feel like it's it just takes time to
Yep.
and technology has its own risks. So we just want to make sure it's rock solid, things
Yes.
like that. So our next big initiative is saying, hey, every travel creator out there, come make a course for BrightTrip, and benefit from us hosting and sharing the revenue.
Mhm.
So,
You mentioned something that I don't want to pass over. It was the idea that this didn't exist, and so if people are buying video travel courses online, it's going to be BrightTrip for the most part, because this didn't really exist as a segment of the industry. And did you ever read the book, the 21 Immutable Laws of Marketing?
I did. Yep.
Oh man, it's such a classic. I think it was written in the early 90s.
Yeah.
But it's
a must read. Yeah.
It is a must read.
It's a little bitty book. So,
It's a little bitty book, and it's like anytime I'm thinking about, with anything to do with branding or marketing or founding or that type of thing, product differentiation or business, whatever it is, like I go back and just leaf through that book. And one of the big ideas in there is that, really every kind of category eventually just winds up with like 1 or 2 main front runners, and then there's usually a pretty big gap, and then there's everybody else. And so if you're founding something, it's great if you can actually found like a new category.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you did with
precisely.
BrightTrip.
Yep. That's what I tell my team all the time. We're not creating travel content. We're creating a new category. So we want to be,
Yes.
we're obviously the first in the category, which is really powerful. And creating a new category is really valuable, especially if you can gain traction.
Yes.
If you're first to market, you're there first. That category belongs to you. Like a smartphone belongs to Apple.
Yes.
We're, at a much smaller scale.
Yep.
Travel courses belong to BrightTrip.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. I love that about what you're doing, because that's going to pay dividends, for forever. All right. So traveling with kids, how do you do it well? And give everyone an update with your personal experience too, because you have some kids, right? How many and
we have
what
a new
age?
one. Yes.
Yeah, you
we
do.
have a 2-month-old.
Yeah.
I know.
Congratulations.
I was joking. So she was 4 days old, and we went to get her passport, apply for her passport. We joked that maybe she might be the youngest person ever to receive a U.S. passport.
I think maybe. Wow.
It came in the mail yesterday.
No way.
Yep. So
very cool.
We can now leave the country. Anyway.
Does a 4-day-old or a 2-month-old baby need a passport?
Mm-hmm. Everybody needs a passport, no matter age.
Really?
Yep.
Do they take any pictures of her, or?
Yeah, so you have to.
Do you hold her up?
Yeah. It's kind of silly, and it's good.
It's a tiny little baby. It's like, oh yeah, you can hold her right here.
Yeah, it's really that silly. Yeah. The funny thing is, it's good for 5 years. A child's passport is good for 5 years. So this baby is 2 months old, or it was 4 days old when we took the picture. Mm-hmm. Imagine what that child's gonna look like in 5 days. So why do you even take a picture?
But it's good for 5 years.
It is good for a child's passport is good for 5 years.
Okay.
An adult's good for 10 years, I think.
And it was a girl, right?
It was a girl.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. Is that your third kid? Fourth kid.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Trying to keep up with you, Ken.
Right? Hey, you got one more to go, and you're there. You'll catch us because we're done.
Well, we are too. So
4's a great number. There was 4 of us when I was raised. It's still a sizable family, man.
It's still a
particularly
sizable
if you start doing some traveling.
Yep.
How old is your oldest now?
Oldest is almost 9.
Okay.
So she'll be 9 next month.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So you have 4 under 9. We have 5 under 10. Yeah.
A 2-month-old and 6, 7, and 8.
Oh, okay. Oh, so your youngest
6,
was
7,
6 years old, and then you had a baby?
Yep.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
You think she was planned?
I'm going to roll the dice on that one and say maybe not. But
she's cute as can be now, so it's fun.
That's the thing with kids, man, is it's like, dude, when you have one, it's like you you can't go back, and you wouldn't want to go back. You know what I mean?
And they're also different.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
Own
but if you were
personalities.
planning for 3 and then 5 years went by and you had a kid, dude, that'd be tough, man.
Yes,
that would be tough.
It's been a learning curve. Although the kids have had a lot of fun with her.
I'm sure.
Because they
Yeah.
were so close. I mean, the boys were 14 months apart, Irish twins,
Wow.
you know? So
Yep.
they were really, really close. So none of the kids have really experienced a child in the home.
Oh, that is cool. And 2, your 9-year-old was a daughter, you said, right? So
Mhm.
she's probably like
Yeah, she's got
really
a
kind
real
of
live baby
mothering.
doll. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, that's so great. All right, so
Yeah.
traveling with kids, what are your thoughts on that?
So BrightTrip was actually born out of this concept. So I was traveling back to Africa, Cape Town, where we used to live, and this time with kids. So this is 2 years ago. And I was really nervous because taking kids to a developing world, taking kids anywhere is a challenge. And I was very nervous, and I wanted to do it right. And I could not find a resource or a collection of resources that was not made in the 1990s that taught me how to do this right. You know, it felt like a real high stakes concept because we had spent a bit of money to get there. It was a challenging place in the world, so it had its own pitfalls. So yeah, BrightTrip was kind of born out of that concept that, you know, this deserves, you know, some meat behind it and this and some just a path forward for traveling with kids. But I think I actually made a list for you. So I made 3 reasons why you should travel with kids. And because of that first experience, that first big travel experience, which was Cape Town, back to visit friends and whatnot, that was such a rewarding trip. And since then, we've obviously traveled a bit more. But there's so many benefits that I think that feel like they're out of reach or feel like it's just too big of a task to travel with kids. But I think with a little bit of kind of understanding, it is really doable and a little bit of flexibility. So, do you want me to run through this list?
Yeah, please. And first,
Curated list for
you said that you ran into this challenge the first time you visited Cape Town, and your kids were much younger at the time. How old were they, or how long ago was that?
That was 3 years ago, I believe. 2.5 years ago. 2 years ago.
Oh, okay.
2.5 years ago.
Okay, so that recent. So you had like 6 and 7-year-old.
Correct. Yeah.
Between 4 and 7 in that range. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a pretty intense time to be traveling internationally with kids, you know?
It is.
Because if they're younger, like 1 or 2, then they're theoretically they're sleeping or you're holding them, that type of thing.
Right.
And if they're like, I don't know, 7, 8, you know, you can feed them an iPad or something.
Yep.
Kind of keep them entertained. But man, in that middle ground, that can be
window,
really tough.
It is tough. Yeah. So yeah, that's why I was so nervous.
Yeah.
It could go really badly and we could be miserable almost the entire time and it's just whatever. So there's kind of certain tactics that we actually teach in our Travel with Kids course that just makes it much more feasible to do and just feels like here's some tactics, here's some strategy to do it. You can do it. And there's so many benefits from doing it anyway.
Yep.
So
yeah, please. I'd love to hear what you guys' ideas are.
3 reasons you should travel with your kids. First of all, I think travel is basically the same thing as learning. There's so many teachable moments while you're traveling that I think it is so interesting. It creates like opportunities for conversation. For example, I think it was last year we went to Iceland with the kids. So traveling to Iceland, which is a very volcanic country and has black sand beaches, for example. Okay, well, why is the sand black when in Florida we're used to seeing white sand? There's just so many like concepts and like the Earth has shifting plates. Oh, that's where the volcanic. There's just so many. There's a litany of conversations you can have with the kids about that destination and why it's different and why it's unique and why are people traveling there. Yeah. So there's that, and I think it develops like context in general, like globally.
Yes.
So like, I mean, the Icelandic people live very differently from us here in Franklin, Tennessee. So I think context is really interesting, and they can use that context to build their worldview and just understand how different people live differently. And that's really valuable.
I love that point, and I've never heard it quite that concisely, that travel is learning. And it totally is. I mean, now you're involving language, you're involving cultures, you're involving the types of food, you're involving geography. I mean, that's one thing that's just so amazing, I think, about this earth is even within the United States of America, the geography changes so much. Like you can be in upstate New York where there's like rolling hills and lakes and greenery and very distinct 4 different seasons, and then you can come here which is a lot of the same, and yet it's still different. And then you go to the desert, and it's like you're in a different world,
Yeah.
but you're still in America.
Yeah.
And so when you like globally, I mean, just the geography is so diverse. I mean, this Earth really is beautiful.
Yeah,
I mean, it's remarkable.
Even physics, if you can think about it that way. So we traveled to the southern hemisphere when we went back to South Africa. So the fact that it's summer there when it's winter here and vice versa, that's interesting. And why is that? Because the tilt of the Earth, for example.
Yep.
So you can cover things like that. Also, we found a constellation that you couldn't see here, the Southern Cross. You've heard of the Southern Cross. Southern Cross is a constellation you can only see in the southern hemisphere. It's the constellation you see on the Australian flag, the New Zealand flag, a lot of flags, Papua New Guinea. A lot of these flags have that little kind of cross made of stars. Have you ever seen that?
I haven't.
But
I haven't thought of it.
It's the Southern Cross, and it's only seen. You can only see it from the southern hemisphere. So anyway, so the fact that so we found the Southern Cross, and why is the Southern Cross here? Have you ever seen it back in Tennessee? No. Here's why. It just really there's a lot of learning opportunities that come when you travel with kids.
Yes, and not just culturally, but now you're getting into science, which is what you're talking about. Math. I mean, the difference between miles per hour and kilometers an hour, like all of those types of things. Conversions. I mean, it's just, I love that idea that travel is learning. I think that puts some legs to sort of some of the ideas or kind of the dreams that my wife and I have with using travel with our kids, and not just for culture and context and getting out of seeing different types of worldviews, but the idea that like while you're doing that, you are learning. I think that's put really well, and I totally agree with that point.
And it's done so naturally too. Like you're not sitting them in a seat and saying, "Okay, today we're going to cover this." It all just comes as a matter of course. So it feels very natural too and hands on. So
yeah, and on that point, how young do you think? Like, my wife thinks she remembers something when she was. Well, maybe it was 5, because on her 5th birthday, someone gave her 5 pennies, and she remembers that. That's pretty dang young. I don't think I remember much when I was 5, but I remember being like 6, 7. Like if my parents had taken me to South Africa when I was 6 years old, I feel like I would remember that. Yeah. Do you think with your kids, like what ages do they start to remember travel?
Yeah, I think earlier than we give them credit for. So I'm still surprised. So we'll sit at the dinner table, and they'll recall these memories of 2 years ago, 3 years ago when we traveled to here or there, and remember so and so, or So I think it's it's so formative because it's such a different experience altogether than their normal day to day, that I think it just imprints an impression on their brain, especially if you travel once or twice a year or once every other year. I mean, that can be a really formative experience, and I think it shape their little lives for the long haul.
Absolutely. And what I like too about this point is I've been thinking a lot recently about the daily habits and cadence and daily disciplines of the family. Like I'm not doing a good job at it right now. I'll just tell you that up front.
That's why I avoided the topic earlier.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you're doing better at it than me.
Let's not talk about parenting.
I can be on. I'm quite sure you're doing better than me. So I've been putting a lot of thought there. Like, do we try to have a family prayer once a day? Do we try to have, like, we don't even eat dinner every day together. I know some families definitely do, but I mean, we do as much as we can, but, or should we try to definitely, read a chapter in the Bible every day? Or like, should I do some things with just Marianne and I every day? Like, I'm thinking in those terms, because I mean, we had some things going, and then school, then virtual, then not. And it's like, man, it's real hard to keep up with all this. And right now I just don't feel like we have good disciplines and habits. So I've been thinking largely in terms of everyday kind of a cadence for the family. What was not so much on my radar though, but what's occurring to me is I think about my childhood, and I think about even when I'm a parent, like doing trips and vacations and having experiences together with the family. Like that's another category that can't be ignored. Yeah. Because when you're away somewhere, whether it's the beach or the mountains or hiking, even it's just for like to take the family and go hike at Radnor for a few hours, you're all together, you're all engaged, you're all kind of in the same space. And like, that's a whole nother level when you travel. And so that's like an aspect of parenting that shouldn't go ignored, which is kind of the whole point you're making here. Because not only are they going to have memories, but you're just more engaged, I feel like, as a parent, Whereas for me, it's really easy to get up, go to work, come home, eat, do something, and and the day's over, and you weren't really that engaged with the kids.
Yeah. For me, travel breaks routine in a healthy way. So kids need structure on a daily basis or kind of on a regular basis. But when you break that routine, I think it kind of liberates you in some ways.
Yes.
Maybe you have dinner a little later because you're in a different time zone, or maybe you have, you do something differently that is unique to that trip. So that's one, it breaks the routine. And two, for me, I think removing myself from the work environment altogether just makes me a better father.
Yes.
Like just not thinking, like being in another place or just not working or not near work or not. I think you're just really concentrated on the kids and the experience that you're having on that trip or in that moment. And I don't know, I just feel so much more relaxed and
I totally agree.
when I'm traveling.
I totally agree. It's almost like we need permission to get away and just be with our family and our kids, and whereas at home it's totally different. I totally agree.
Because I have
that
such
point.
this need to feel productive or be productive.
Mhm.
Like that's like a real. I cannot relax because there's this intense. Maybe it's society, maybe it's an American thing. I don't know, but just this drive towards productivity is like. Stinks, but I don't experience that when I'm traveling. So,
well, I was just thinking too, is like, man, that is so. I totally agree. I feel the exact same way. And then I'm thinking, well, man, have we sort of messed this up with like capitalism in America? Like, it can overtake you, right? I mean, it can be like all consuming, too consuming. You focus on what you're building and making life better, and then you all just you just like pass over being and talking and loving and enjoying. And yet, if we were like, all right, we're not going to have this capitalistic society in America, we are just going to sort of, have a good life and send out money to everyone and just be and enjoy and eat and hike and like those types of things. Well, it sounds great. It's just society doesn't move forward.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to have people with individual incentives to build and be productive in all of this. You kind of need that for the good of the entire society. But those builders, particularly the aggressive ones, you have to be okay like letting them out every so often, right? To go breathe and be.
Right.
So, yeah.
It makes me think of Europeans, a lot of Europeans. So like Italians, they don't work to live, or they live to work. Work to live, not live to work.
Yes.
Yeah. Because work is secondary, in other words.
That's right. Yes, totally. Well, and that's why I kind of like, I've never been to Italy, but I sort of feel like that culture really resonates with me. And yeah, I don't know if it does because I've never been there. But like, I kind of like that vibe of like, but I don't know. But I want
Spaniards are the same way. I mean,
Spaniards?
Spain, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Spaniards. They just, they're living life. They're not accomplishing the next task on their list.
Okay.
They're more interested in living life.
Which sounds really cool, and yet I don't know how I would do if I lived in there. I think it would be an adjustment. So, all right. So back to traveling with kids. So yeah, the traveling is learning. I love that point.
So travel is learning. Two, I think is hugely important, especially in the world that we currently live in. Travel creates empathy and diverse experiences, particularly around empathy. So, I mean, really, when you travel, I could just see these kids developing a sense of understanding that they didn't have before and respect for this concept or this way of doing things that they would not have had before. So I think about when we travel to Cape Town with our kids, we had the opportunity to go to the shanty towns and walk and be. We used to serve in one of the shanty towns. They call them townships in Cape Town. So we visited one of the townships that we served in and volunteered in. And it just so happened that the domestic helper that was at the Airbnb, which we stayed, she lived in the township that we had volunteered in. So we had this awesome opportunity to go see, her name was Piwa. So we went and saw Piwa's house, which was just a little bitty shack, barely held together. She showed us her home, where she slept. The kids realized that she didn't have a TV, she didn't have a stove, she didn't have a bathroom in the home, things like that. And just empathizing with her living circumstances. And she was happy as could be. And understanding that and just developing that perspective is really, really valuable, I think.
Yes.
Especially in today where everybody's at each other's throats and there's zero empathy.
Yes, 100%. And also, it's a good, I think of like, I'm thinking of like African type music where there might be like a lot of almost might sound a little chaotic with like, drums and chants and that type of thing. And I'm just picturing like some kids from America seeing that might think to themselves, or might even make the comment like, oh, that's a little weird. But that's a really good learning opportunity if you investigate, like, why do they think that's weird? It's not because that music is weird. It's because you're in a culture that doesn't do that. And the type of music you have is very different from that.
Yep.
And so when you but there's cultures all over the world. They're all different. It's not like the America got it right and our culture's right and the others are weird. It's like, it's just what you're used to. And that's how they do that there. So, and that does absolutely bring empathy and understanding. Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, it makes them more adaptable too. Like understanding that, I don't know, Asian cultures don't use a spoon. They often use chopsticks. That's not, like you said, it's not weird. It's just a different experience, a different dining experience.
Yes.
And it's not right or wrong.
Yep.
So,
in Pakistan, they eat with their fingers, and you had what's it called, like naan or whatever.
Yep.
It's like that bread, and you would just dip everything in the naan and eat it. And I'll be honest, like I feel like they got it right.
Yeah.
Like of all the ways to eat, I'm cool with chopsticks too, and like a knife and a good fork can do some pretty good damage on a steak. But the way, like eating with your fingers and naan, there's something about that that's, I wish there was more of that here.
Yeah. I agree.
But it's the type of food too. It works when you scoop it up in the naan, you know?
I just love I just saw my kids just like bending their norms and just becoming more adaptable. Like just because the peanut butter wasn't like they're used to in the United States, well, that's okay. Like, and here's why that's different,
Yes.
It also creates a sense of like responsibility. So they have to pack themselves, they have to have access to their supplies and things like that, but they're responsible for their suitcase. So it's also like a bit of a moment where they can create some responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think just understanding that how wealthy the United States is, like there's a scarcity of resources all around the world. And we live in such a privileged place. That's a big thing that we try to tease out on every travel experience.
Yes.
That the Lord's just blessed them in so many ways, and they ought to be grateful.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to forget to ask you this, so let me just ask it now, and we'll come back here. But for a parent or parents listening right now that have a couple of kids, they're like, man, I'll keep listening, but I'm sold. Like, I want to go travel with my kids, but money's tight. But they want to travel outside America. Where would be a good place that's pretty economical, or the most economical, to travel with a few kids internationally out of America?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of opportunities. The dollar is so strong. Like we talked about our last podcast, I think the strength of the dollar has created some really great opportunities to travel to other countries that have weaker currencies, and it's very affordable. So, for example, Argentina, their currency is weakened severely against the dollar. So Argentina might be a good opportunity. It's a little harder to get there, but probably honestly, a lot of Americans and a lot of first travel experiences gravitate towards Costa Rica. Costa Rica is it's a great place, and it's very affordable, and there's lots of different types of kid opportunities. So there's like these travel canopies that are so kid friendly. You can walk across this bridge and it's just this whole, you feel like you're in the top of the canopies. There's a lot of animals, there's a lot of water. Kids love water, you should always involve a water activity when you're traveling with kids.
Yes, I agree.
So anyway, Costa Rica might be a good place.
Okay.
And we actually have a course on that. So there's lots to do in Costa Rica with kids.
Okay.
But I think honestly, I think there's lots of places that you shouldn't plan your trip around kids necessarily. I think you should go for the travel experience that you want, and then there's like things you can do during the trip to make it kind of appropriate for kids, or friendly for kids, and make it work with kids.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's come back to traveling with kids and your thoughts there.
Yeah. So lastly, I think travel opens kids' minds in a way that is really interesting, and I think I love thinking big. Not everybody likes to think big, but I love that their horizons are broadened so much, and their minds are open so much that, man, this world is so big and has so much to offer, and there's so many different types of topography, of cultures, like we mentioned, of the way of doing things and economies. And I think about if we were to travel to Italy and go to the what is it, Parmigiano Reggiano, or that part of why did they so good at making cheeses, and how did those families pass down these skills to their kids and their kids' kids? I don't know. It just feels like there's this opening of your mind, and there just translates to so many concepts that you can just really broaden the horizons with.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
So those are 3 reasons to travel with kids, right? Travel is learning.
Travel creates empathy.
Yep.
And
It was
travel-
empathy, and it was something else too, though. Was it understanding?
and diverse
Sure.
experiences.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it opens their minds. Travel
Yeah.
opens little kiddos' minds.
Yeah. I love that. Totally agree.
There's one last concept I wanted to broach. Have you heard of this new? It might be a micro trend, but this new trend of slow travel. Have you heard that concept? Slow travel?
No. Is it like vagabonding?
No. It's so typically you travel for days, right? And it's maybe a 7 or 10 day trip. You hit the hot spots and then you're out, right? You have to. You can only accomplish so many things in 10 days, but you have to kind of see the things you have to see and do the things you have to do. So slow travel is, especially in this new virtual kind of world we're living in, going to a place for months and not days, immersing yourself in the culture, putting your kids in the schools, working from there, living from there, understanding the culture, not just the hot spots, not just visiting, the Trevi Fountain in Rome, but understanding how they live there. I think there's a lot of value in slow travel and just being in a place for, up to 3 months and really just traveling that way, as opposed to what we're used to, hitting it with a flight, then back out, bam.
Yep.
There's just so much value that you can gain from this concept of slow travel.
So I love that concept. Immediately, I think I and probably other people are like, yeah, I love that so much, but how in the world could I ever do that? Which is, like in my situation, I think that's actually very doable right now. Like all of our kids are virtual.
I think a lot of people would be surprised.
I agree with
do
that.
it.
Yeah.
Challenging those.
And heck, we're renting our house right now. Yeah. We don't even own it. So like if we were to travel for 3 months, you could save that rent, but that means he's going to rent it to someone else. Yeah. So when you get home, you might not have, which wouldn't be great. But what are your thoughts on, like, how is that easier maybe than what most people would think?
I think just because everything's virtual now, a lot of people are not required to show up to an office. So that's really interesting. Actually, there's this huge kind of mini economy of these mostly young professionals. So it'd be obviously easier as a young professional, but a whole host of young professionals who are traveling from country to country to country and working. So there's organizations that set up a workspace and internet, and they kind of help them with housing. But yeah, they slow travel from country to country to country. I found more and more since founding BrightTrip. I found more and more of those type of people that I had no idea existed. And there's one family I met last week. He owns his own business. They homeschool their kids for the very reason of traveling to places for lengths of time, not days. Yeah. So it's fascinating.
But like, go.
If not now, one of my points is, if not now, in this kind of weird COVID, world where you had this reprieve to work remotely or be in a different time zone. There's just like this. I feel like there's this unique window where people could kind of get away with it.
There absolutely is. And if you kind of run down the checkbook, or checklist, okay, church, well, right now it's kind of both options, in person or virtual. And so if someone's kind of willing to go virtual, so church, work, but if you're working from home anyway, so there's that. That's virtual. Then
and a lot of people attending church from home.
Yeah, absolutely. And then school, well, some schools are virtual. Ours were virtual and then not, and then they're virtual again, so there's that. Then it's the money to get someplace, right? And then potentially the extra money to live there. But I wonder, this depends where you would travel to, of course, but do you think that you can most commonly, if you were to go somewhere for 3 months outside of America, do you think, excluding the travel to and from there, while you're there, do you think it costs you more to be there for 3 months than if you were to stay at home, or less?
So I think it's really interesting if you can rent your house out for 6 months, right. 3 to 6 months. That is really attractive.
Yes.
And I think you would probably save money in the end. and you'd be able to have the opportunity to embed in the culture, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think different locations differ so much.
Mm-hmm.
Like Switzerland probably would not be possible because it's just in a very expensive country.
Okay.
But a lot of developing countries, you'd probably save money, especially on food. And like you could probably, if you rent your house out for, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000,
Mm-hmm.
you could probably rent a space in one of these developing countries for, Indonesia, for example,
Mm-hmm.
for a fraction of that.
Yes.
So it all kind of,
and then you can use the balance or the difference to pay for travel to and from, or at least help towards those expenses, and go out to eat more, or just do things there, spend a little extra money that you wouldn't spend at home, but you're making up the difference because you're renting out your house.
Yeah.
I love that idea of slow travel because, I mean, quite frankly, the idea of like flying into, call it Italy, and just trying to tour all of Italy, or even worse yet, like Europe for 10 days, it's not very attractive to me.
It's exhausting.
It's like, if I go to Italy, I'll be honest, I want to like spend those 10 days in one or two cities and just not be on a train or a bus the entire time.
Yeah, and the pressure to see all that it doesn't exist, And I don't know. So I feel like there's so many activities. So Italy is a great example. There are so many activities to do in Italy, really, no matter where you are. And I feel like in some places in the United States, there's just a lack of opportunity for activities. Whether it's topography or whether it's, I don't know, just availability to walk down the street, or community, or go see a certain industry. I don't know. It just feels like the opportunities are really interesting for activities, especially as a family.
So you think that's a thing? Because that thought has crossed my mind before. Like, it's not uncommon for us on a Saturday or Sunday, just like Marianne and I, to kind of run down the checklist of what could we do with the kids today. You know what I mean? It's like, we could go hiking. Well, we could do this. We could do that. And it's sort of weird how short that list is. And we're in Nashville, which I feel like is fairly family friendly. Mm-hmm. So do you think other countries
we do that same thing,
right?
we usually end up sitting on the couch.
Exactly.
What do you do?
That's kind of the thing. And so, but you're saying there are countries that have more to do for families than here?
I think so. So we're obviously considering, or we're working towards going to Cape Town for 6 months as a part of this. We had always planned to kind of a 6 months to a year abroad as a family. That has always been in the cards for us. But this slow travel, it's kind of like that earlier vision kind of put into terms. So I think that us slow traveling back to Cape Town, where we have a network, let's start small, where we have a network. But Cape Town, the activities are endless.
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, the hiking, there's Table Mountain right there. There's the beaches. There's the vineyards that have tons of kids activities. There's the national parks. There's game drives, or there's safaris, as they call them, game drives. There's just so much to do. I mean, so.
That sounds, you're getting me excited, man. You're going to give me trouble.
But that's true for a lot. But I think about Thailand, because you guys almost went to Thailand.
Yeah.
There's so much to do in Thailand, too. They have the beaches. They have the mountains. And they have that interesting canal, or the river that runs through, that have all these little markets on it. It's just so many things that that I feel like you could do.
Are you going to Cape Town because of COVID, or in spite of COVID?
No, we'd always planned on January going to Cape Town.
Okay.
So, but COVID is proving hard. So,
because of Cape Town, or because of South Africa's laws?
Yeah, so we had planned to stay for 6 months, because I was going to take a business class while I was there.
Cool.
At the University of Cape Town. So we would have a student visa. But COVID has just, I think, put a kink in their system and issuing, admission offers.
I see.
We're working through that. But
okay,
we will go either for 3 months or 6 months.
Okay, so it's not that you're going to not travel because of COVID. That's not the thing. The thing is getting a visa to get in there.
Exactly.
I see.
I think it's really making it, the economics don't make as much sense doing it for 3 months, because we could rent our house out and just be there for 6 months or even a year. And that would make it really, really zero pressure. Or make it economic sense, not even pressure. It would be more of it'd make economic sense.
Yep.
So it's harder to justify economically 3 months, but we'd still do it. It's so valuable to us that we would do it. Actually, I was reading, maybe this is justifying to myself, but I was reading a study that kids, especially teens, but kids who have studied abroad or lived abroad score higher grades and have higher incomes. That's obviously a loose correlation, but it's a real study, a couple studies. But I think that's true. I mean, I think you could probably draw a pretty straight line especially in specific cases where kids have really benefited, and whether through broadened horizons or new experiences or whatever the list or whatever the item is, I bet it would translate into higher grades and higher incomes down the road.
I think it's absolutely conceivable to think that would be the case, because when you think about being, let's just say, getting into the workforce in the 80s, for example, the chances of you having daily correspondence, communication with someone outside of America certainly happened, but it was a lot more rare and it was more industry specific and those types of things. Well, now with people entering the workforce in 2020, I mean, you could be going in a Zoom meeting with 6 people and 2 of them live outside of America, and that's just how that they work at your company, and that's just the thing. Yeah. And so if you have a broader, more global kind of understanding, comprehension, like, of course that's going to correlate. Like it makes sense because we're very global now.
Yeah, because you have the context for multiple conversations and understand or you empathize with their point of view. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Perspective goes a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's what that is.
Yeah, life's about perspective, I would say, in a lot of ways.
Agreed. Yeah. Do you have some tips and pointers for traveling with kids? So you gave us some reasons why.
Take the BrightTrip How to Travel with Kids course. That's my tip.
By the way, if someone wants to buy that course, where do they go to brighttrip.com and then search for traveling with kids?
So you can go to brighttrip.com/travel with kids. You go right to the course page, or you can go to brighttrip.com/courses, and it has all our courses there.
Okay. All right, cool.
Easy to find.
How much is that course? Do you know offhand?
I think it's $22.
Okay.
But we're having a Cyber Monday sale, so.
Oh, wow.
Which obviously your listeners wouldn't.
Yeah, they're not listening live, but you're selling that course for less than $22?
$22, yeah.
Wow, even $22?
Yeah.
I thought your courses were going to be more like $100. Did
Sorry
you kind of do you find that $20 to $40 range is sort of a good window?
So you can buy a guidebook for $20-ish, $20 to $30.
Okay.
So we think in a lot of ways, at least our first phase of the business is competing in the guidebook market. So if you preferred video over print, blog or even a physical guidebook, and you're offered a chance to take a video course as opposed to buy a guidebook, then we think we can take that share of the market, some share of that market.
Yeah.
So we've really started there.
Yeah. Well, it's working, right?
Yeah, so far.
Do you want to give us any kind of tips on traveling with kids, or do you just want to whet the appetite and let us take the course?
That course is so beautiful and comprehensive that if you're really interested, you should go.
You
don't
want to hurt it? I see what
I don't want to hurt it. No, I'm just trying to recall the exact tips. But anyway, yeah.
No, it's fine.
All right.
Yeah. So,
but lots of value with traveling with kids. That's a core concept around just our family, but also BrightTrip, of course, is one of the key beliefs.
I would be very interested in traveling
to Thailand. That trip didn't happen, right?
No, it didn't happen because that happened right when COVID, and no one knew what was going on with COVID, and Thailand was actually locking down pretty quick, and so I think I'm glad in hindsight we didn't go, because if we'd have went, the experience was not going to be the same anyway. Yeah. It was at that point where, like, to get into a market, they're checking your temperature, and not that many people were out, and so I think it's probably better that we delayed that. Yeah,
well, we canceled our Paris trip.
That's right.
As well.
That was over that time.
I think that was the right decision too.
Yeah.
Kicking and screaming, but we did.
Yeah. But the traveling with kids in a car, that's an interesting one. We have 12 hours to my home in New York, and we have 12 hours to Mariana's family in Pennsylvania, and with 5 kids, it's too far to drive, man. But we have driven it a few times, and I don't think there's a good way to drive that far with kids in it. You know what I mean? That's meant to take a plane. Fly. You got to fly. Yeah.
I hate driving.
So what I'd love to do is hear you talk through, if almost like you were coaching someone who had this idea that they wanted to found this startup company and use outside capital, and these types of things tend to be more focused on growth and revenue, I think, than cash flow out of the gate. And maybe there's an exit plan in 3, 5, 7, or 10 years, whatever. That whole model, I'd love for you to talk us through it.
Yeah.
If you're cool with that.
Sure.
And that's sort of, again, kind of compared or contrasted to a model where, I want to start selling these clay coffee mugs. And so, I get 10 grand together and I start selling a few and I try to cash flow and grow it from there, know?
Yeah.
So I guess maybe the first question is, how do you know when that's the right model? And how do you know when the model is actually, no, you just need to scrape some cash together and start and try to cash flow it?
Well, I think that's the first question you need to ask yourself. Do you want to have a lifestyle business where you might be selling mugs, but you grow at your own pace, you bootstrap, there's not intense pressure to grow quickly, to grow fast, because the most important thing about a startup is a startup because it grows fast, right? It is designed to grow quickly, like quick, like 30% a month, 10% a week, even down to that level. So I think you have to ask yourself, do I want a lifestyle business, but which can be a very large business? You can grow a business large. I know it's like super, sexy or attractive to have a venture-backed business, but I think you have to really ask yourself, do I want the venture pressure, and do I want to live that life and under that kind of stress to grow fast because I have somebody holding me accountable for this growth? And if that growth is not achieved, maybe you don't go on to the next funding round, or So there's a lot of drawbacks. I had a conversation last 2 weeks ago with a fellow who built a big business, $5 million in revenue or something, and he did it as a lifestyle business. He had been approached by some VCs, even some private equity guys, and just chose to grow it kind of organically. It took him longer. It took him, probably twice the amount of time it would have had he applied some capital to it. But yeah, so I think,
was that a tech-based business or was that product-based business?
it was ed tech business. So he was selling. It was also courses, which is why we connected.
Okay.
He was selling, I think, courses on like how to do animations or how to do video or how to do Adobe Photoshop, things like that.
Do you think that whether you're going to do a startup or a lifestyle business, is that what we should call the coffee mug business, where we just start making them, and lifestyle business?
Lifestyle business.
Okay. All right. So do you think that the choice between a venture-backed startup and lifestyle business is primarily the type of business or what you're selling? Or do you think it's really what the founders want out of it?
I think it's both. So I think, one, you have to ask yourself that question, like what kind of life do you want to live? What kind of what's the what's right for you? Then two, like that coffee mug business is not, you cannot scale that indefinitely.
Yes.
So there's some businesses that can't scale to the degree that a venture-backed company needs it to scale, or a VC firm needs it to scale, because VCs have a lot of pressures from their general partners, or LPs, what do they call them, to achieve a certain amount of growth or get a certain return on their investments, because a lot of them will go bust. Like a crazy amount will just go away.
Really?
So they have the few that are doing well have to do really, really, really well. So they're picking companies not based on the idea necessarily, but honestly, I've had a lot of conversations with VCs, and a lot of them feel like they're chasing the next shiny thing, which is really frustrating. So it's more about, can they get that return? So I think, back to your question, I think you need to ask yourself, is my business really scalable if I were to apply capital? Like, can I? So BrightTrip is a decent example. Like, we could sell an indefinite amount of courses. Our software allows us to sell as many courses as, we could sell courses to every person in the world. And our software could support that because, but you cannot build an organization large enough to provide everybody or sell a coffee cup to every single person in the world. That's a kind of a ridiculous example, but
well, it's a great example. I think it's a great example because it's so clear. So the type, because I always kind of picture like tech kind of making more sense with venture-backed startup, and like product-based businesses making more sense with lifestyle. But I guess I was looking for an example of a product-based business that did use venture-backed funding, and they probably exist, although I'm not thinking of one right now. Like, I'm thinking of all the big ones, like Uber and Airbnb, but that's all basically a tech play. That's, they're not making the cars or anything like that.
Yeah.
Is there any product-based businesses where it might make sense?
There are VCs that invest in hardware, customer, what do we call it? B2C type.
Sure.
It's not hardware. Hardware is a technology. There are some that exist. And I think I'm sure they have some kind of, maybe they're investing in a brand. So I think about a luggage company, which is, obviously luggage has been around for a long time, but it's a space that is kind of boring, right? It's a lot of Samsonite black suitcases. So this company called Away Travel basically became a travel brand, right? Not a luggage company. So they were a social driven business. So that's scalable, right? So you can scale that social component. Yes, you're still making a lot of suitcases. You can only make so many suitcases, but investing in a brand and growing a kind of a new white space, like this social driven luggage category, whereas before, if you went to the what Dillard's or Macy's, whatever, just a wall of brands you probably never heard of except for maybe one, right? And it's not even compelling. That brand is not compelling. It's not a travel brand. It doesn't make you want to travel or identify with that brand. So I think a lot of VCs kind of invest in those social driven businesses when it involves a physical product.
Okay, that makes sense. So the scalability of the business is going to be a factor for choosing whether venture backed or lifestyle makes more sense. What the founder is looking out of this idea, that's going to obviously impact that as well, of course. What else would be kind of factors in choosing whether venture-backed is the right model or not?
I think also like just thinking through how much capital it's going to take to get this business to a place where you can raise serious capital. So it's really handy as a founder if you have a decent amount of cash to put into your business, especially if you plan to attract some venture funding. So I think the best example of this is Elon Musk. So Elon Musk sold PayPal for $230 million. His share of it was $230 or whatever. It was a lot. And then he went and founded Tesla and SpaceX. But he didn't need to attract capital. He didn't need to get this enormous amount of traction. So that's an outsized example, but it really is handy if the founder can invest a bit of money of their own. That way, you can build a product. Because investors invest in ideas sometimes, but usually venture is investing in growth. So they're investing in your traction up to that point, and really just applying gas to the flame so you can grow. So not investing in a venture, they're investing in growth. There's very few. There are some seed stage or pre-seed actually. So there's some pre-seed VCs out there who are literally investing in an idea. But even then, like you need some kind of traction because you're trying to tick off the doubts. So can you build this product? Can you put together a team? Can you acquire a customer? What is your margin profile? Can you even get a margin profile that is interesting? There's just a lot. So it's really handy if you're thinking about trying to build a company that would attract venture funding, is either have some capital of your own that you can put towards the business, or kind of a network of friends and family, or kind of angel type investors that believe in you and would invest some in you.
Yes. So the founder puts some money in, or friends and family, or a combination of the above, to kind of generate that proof of concept to show like, hey, we've got something here. That really needs to happen before you go try to get, $2, $3, $5, $10, $100 million.
Yeah.
Right. But even the $100 million, you're not getting $100 million. You're first doing your own money, friends and family, and then maybe you get, I don't know, a couple mil or a mil. It would depend on the thing, right?
Yeah. Really, the traditional path is either you or friends and family invest some capital. It's usually a couple $100,000. Once you kind of meet the milestones based on that and you achieve a certain amount of traction, then maybe you attract an angel who invests $500,000 to $1 million, depending on where you are, maybe $2 million if you're out on the West Coast. Once you meet those milestones and you have significant traction, then you often will move on to a seed stage. The seed stage is usually $1 to $3 million, $1 to $5 million sometimes, depending on where you are. Then again, you're using that capital. And again, the point is you're funding growth at that point. To even compete for this, you have to have a decent amount of traction and real revenue, or at least real users. Like a real user growth, or like a lot of revenue and a lot of users is the point.
Yeah.
To compete
for the venture round, which is 500,000 to $1 million, or if you're on the West Coast, 2 million. Say, yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a misnomer that like if it's a good idea, somebody will invest in it. It's really competitive. The venture backed or just capital in general is really, really competitive. And there's probably more money out there than there is good ideas, but still, it is really difficult. And there's that bar at least from my experience, is really high to attract capital. Outside of the kind of friends and family or angel.
Yep. Yeah. Walk us through those numbers. So friends and family, let's call it. What would be the number on that? You think?
Yeah, I think it's first of all it's on individual. So anywhere from $25,000 to $100,000, I think you could probably, and it's true friends and family. Like you're relying on these folks who believe in you as a person more than you are a company.
And yeah, that's right. And let's think through a scenario where there's co-founder, because I feel like that's probably the most common, right? And all right, so you got two people with this idea, and they go out and get anywhere between $25,000 and $100,000 to get this thing. That's the kind of the friends and family round. But the friends and family that can be up to like $250,000, right? Yeah,
could be
kind of at that stage. It's kind of whatever you need. So now you get proof of concept. Then you're getting an angel, $500,000 to $2 million.
Yep, it could be. You could go straight to seed. It depends on how sophisticated the angel group or the angel is. Like there's some angels out on the West Coast that are writing serious checks, and they're have this fantastic reputation in the venture community of picking winners. So if you find the right angel, it's almost as good as a seed, because you might maybe gain enough traction to go to your Series A type round, which is a much larger check. So it depends.
It depends. Yeah, that is the active.
And I'm not the authority.
The active verb. And then when you get into seed, is that just before like round A, B, and C?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
So seed is often your post revenue. You have real customers. You've acquired. You found this repeatable process where you can acquire a customer profitably, and you're generating real revenue, or at least you are on a path towards generating serious revenue. And usually seed is that up to $5 million round, depending on the business and how much capital the business needs. $5 million, and usually it's almost an equation. Usually it's about 20% of the company that you give up for a seed round.
Okay. How much of the company would it be conceivable you would have up until the seed round, though? Let's say in a situation where there's two co-founders, the friends and family round was $250,000, and then they got to the seed round. You're saying the seed round would take 20% or Series A?
No, the seed round.
The seed round, okay.
15 to 20%.
15 to 20% there. Okay, all right. So at this point, you've got 100% of the business except for the equity that you need to give up with friends and family.
Right.
What might be an equity amount that they might give up at the friends and family kind of round or category?
Yeah, so one of the things about early stage companies, it is really difficult to value that company. So there's been some interesting kind of methods, mostly like what they call convertible securities. So convertible securities delay that valuation question down the road, which helps the founders because you can kind of build your valuation. You can improve your valuation. And two, you can let real market makers or real investors value your company. Like professionals will come in and value your company. Whereas an angel or especially a friends and family, you have no idea what is this category. Where's the valuation lie in this category? Or there's just not enough subject matter expertise at that level to understand it. So it's really really handy to do that. But yeah, often like a founder will give up 3 to 5%. I think depending on how much you raise. That is pretty typical. So I think kind of rule of thumb, if the founder after that first significant fundraise, usually $1 million to $2 million, maybe more. Kind of in that seed type round, the founder kind of ends up with about 20 or giving away about 20%, give or take.
So now you've
much more than that is a disincentive for the founders.
Oh, really? Okay. So now you've raised, we'll call it $1 million or $2 million, and you and your co-founder at that point in the scenario that we're kind of laying out, you've raised $1 million or $2 million, and you and your co-founder still have 80% of the equity. Okay. And so 40% each. So then what happens at like Series A? And by the way, do most just never get to Series A except like the Ubers and the Airbnbs and all of them?
Yeah. There's a lot of Series A each year, a lot of capital raised. But I think it all goes back to what's your traction and what's your revenue. Like if you're going for a Series A, you probably ought to be on track for significant revenue. So maybe it's 5 million, or maybe it's at least trending towards that, a growth rate that trends towards that. I think a rule of thumb is about 30% a month. If you're able to grow 30% a month, on whatever your KPI is, usually it's revenue, then you should be able to attract some capital.
30% a month indefinitely, which obviously it's not indefinitely, but during an almost indefinite amount of time to get Series A.
Right.
That's
I would
so
say
much growth.
Yeah. I mean,
My
obviously
gosh.
it depends, but yeah, it's all, I mean, the point of a startup is fast
Yeah.
growth.
Yeah. And
Otherwise, it's just a business.
Right. And is it designed to be fast because it's a fast world and things are going to change, and if you don't do it, someone else is going to? Is that why it's designed to be fast? Or because these investors want their money back so quick?
Yeah. Well, I think not that they want it back so quick, they have to have it back at a certain point, and it has to grow large.
Yeah.
So they're looking for a 1x or 2x. I mean, that's great, especially for a normal investor. I'm sure tripling your money would be attractive.
Mm-hmm.
But a VC needs a unicorn. They need a big win. They need $100 million business valued at $1 billion. They need that $1 billion company, which 10x is typically how you value a tech business. Although that's changing some with some of these startups that have just grown big and gone bust. What's the WeWork? WeWork is starting to change some of that and some of the perspectives in the VC land. But so profitability matters, in other words.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a pretty decent example of that.
Because it used not to. WeWork, it did not matter. Growth at all. WeWork, it did not matter. Profitability was not
That's right.
Important clearly to that organization.
Yeah. By the way, whatever happened with them? Are they just completely done, or have they restructured?
No, I haven't kept pace with them, but
I haven't either.
We should go research it. It
It
really is a
our
case
internet's
study.
out right now, unfortunately, so we would look it up otherwise. But yeah, they just that was it. But what's interesting about that was, well, it was still pretty scalable though, because they were in on the lease side. But it got really weird with the founder wanting to buy everything too and lease it back to the company. It just it felt, I don't know.
Yeah, a mess.
Yeah, it felt like a mess.
Yeah.
It looked like a mess, I should say.
Yeah.
Okay. What if someone is going to do this and they have a great idea and they have a co-founder, and that's a situation, and they've built out some things and they've modeled it and it's going to work and they're just getting their toes in the water here, and they're ready to kind of go beyond friends and family? What are some things they should be thinking about when it gets into that next round, that kind of series round, like kind of getting into some legit investor money here at this point, right? Mm-hmm. Like, what are some things they need to be thinking about or being prepared for before they just kind of get what could maybe be like thrown to the wolves if they're not properly prepared?
Yeah, I think the best thing they can do, and the best founders think about not raising capital, but acquiring customers and meeting their business goals. So I would really focus on, because I think a lot of folks get caught up in fundraising, right? So you can spend a lot of time talking to a lot of investors, and it's like really important that you raise this capital. But instead, I would encourage founders to really spend the energy on your business and growing your business, because if you grow your business, you'll attract capital. So really focusing on the customer. Back to our initial conversation, like talking to your customers and understanding what's that white flame that is starting to kind of burn brightly in your business, and doubling down on that, or understanding customer trends, or why is your product resonating with customers? Have you found product market fit? Things like that. And how can I improve my margins, or how can I invest in this next product, or build this product out where it'll serve my customers better and then grow revenue. So I think really focusing on that and not like putting together this, I guess, master plan for fundraising, I think is probably a best practice, because you will, if you're growing quickly, and it gets out that you're fundraising, it's not even. Yeah, it's the problem solved.
Okay.
So I think really just focusing on growing your business.
So that's where you want to put. That's kind of that's where if you put in like 20% of your effort, it'll give you 8% of the results. Like that's where you need to put your focus, because that leveraged amount of where you're putting that focus is going to like help everything else, which I feel like is good news, right? Because I think most founders just want to work on the company, right? They don't want to, particularly on the revenue side, they don't want to be talking to investors.
Fundraising is literally a waste of time apart from the capital. I mean, there's no I mean, I guess there is like smart money, if you can call it smart money, that maybe they can connect you with, especially if you have a SaaS company, they can connect you with customers, large customers, things like that. But yeah, I think, the role, especially if you're a CEO of a company, your job is to keep cash in the bank. So that is important.
Mm-hmm.
You can't let the company run out of cash. The business hasn't failed unless it's run out of cash.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as CEO, that should be top of mind. If that involves fundraising, then it should be a priority. But, coming up with a vision, recruiting the team, and keeping cash in the bank,
Mm-hmm.
or making sure you're executing on your business to
Mm-hmm.
keep cash in the bank is kind of the way you got to think about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So it might require a fundraise.
Yeah.
If you need to go find cash, you ought to go find cash.
Yes.
So
And then how are you projecting how much cash you need to raise? Are you just looking at kind of your cash burn rate and saying, here's what I need to accomplish X? Is that the primary thing you're looking at that point?
yeah, there's two ways. There's like the really practical way, like, okay, what is my burn rate, and how do I, modeling that out. Then there's this more like theoretical building a financial model. I don't know if you've done this with some of your businesses, but like having that master spreadsheet with tons of formulas that model out your business.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do X, Y, and Z, or if I sell this, or if this revenue stream does this or grows at this rate, modeling that out.
Mm-hmm.
And there's certain capital requirements that'll need.
Yeah.
So your expenses will dictate, to grow fast, sometimes you need a lot of capital to grow
Mm-hmm.
fast. So I think early, just kind of understanding your burn rate, how much cash, how much runway you have for that. But later, and really before you really get in front of serious investors, really understanding that business model and what are those pivot points,
Mm-hmm.
what are those levers that you need to pull or invest in to meet your objectives in that business model.
Mm-hmm. And when you're getting,
sorry to interrupt.
Yep,
I feel like a lot of founders, early stage founders, do not understand their business model really well. They do not understand the economics of their model and how they're going to make money. They get caught up in the product or what could be, or the vision.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, the investor wants to know how you're going to make money.
Yes.
So I think describing that really clearly, it seems to be a challenge for a lot of founders, but it's really important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are those unit economics?
Yeah. Yep. And at that point, if you're talking to, investors at the $500,000 to $2 million range, they may ask for any financials that you may have into that point, or they're going to do some due diligence, but they're less concerned about whether you're buying water bottles for your office staff and more concerned about the revenue track and how quickly you can hit those revenue goals, correct?
Right.
That's really where they're focusing, because
they're digging into the business. Yeah. Not your culture necessarily, maybe, but the business.
Because what they want to do is they want you to sell or have an exit in X amount of years' time, where they're going to sell to someone to get their money back plus a bunch, right?
Yeah.
And so everyone knows with this investor-backed kind of business model, everyone's clear all the way from the beginning, like what the end goal is, right? If it's an exit or whatever.
Absolutely.
And most of the time it is an exit, correct?
Yeah. I think all the time. Yeah, there needs to be some kind of exit, whether it's going public, which I think only 10% of startups go public.
Is it that many though?
That's the recent stat I read. That might be.
I guess no. I mean, I guess that's still, it's just 10%. That number is maybe a touch higher than I would have thought, but
most of the companies end up in acquisition. Companies get bought, not sold. That's another key point. So usually, like you're bringing value to a larger company, so they buy you. They want to just own the product, or they want to own the roadmap, or they want to own the team who's executing on this.
Mm-hmm. So when you say companies get bought, not sold, you're speaking to sort of how the founders need to be thinking about who's going to buy this and why. It's not like, oh, one day I have a business to sell, I'm sure someone's going to want to buy it. You got to be thinking about who my buyer is going to be. Is that what you mean behind companies get bought,
it's almost
not sold?
a mentality. Yeah. So like you're not going to go out there and sell your company one day. Somebody will probably offer you something because you're bringing value to that company. So so someone's going to buy you.
Yep.
You're going to have this inbound kind of acquisition, request, or, just offer, as opposed to you going out, because your valuation goes way down if you're trying to sell something, right? But your valuation goes way up if you have a buyer.
I see.
It's kind of like the bid ask system in the market, kind of the similar concept.
Yep. Okay. So going back to sort of these equity agreements, the SAFE, is that what it is called?
Mhm.
The SAFE agreement. That's kind of like that's what is it Y Combinator?
Y Combinator, yeah,
You
they
know,
came up with that. Mhm.
They came up with it.
They came up with
Okay,
it. Yeah.
I forgot that. But they use it a lot in any case, right? And that's what like Uber was built on. I was going to say Netflix, but maybe not. But that's a very common one in the tech space for venture-backed capital.
So there's two what they call convertible securities, and that again is um, the agreement is for future equity. So the SAFE stands for simple agreement because it is literally a 5-page agreement, a simple agreement for future equity. So again, your shares, you don't have shares yet. You have a promise for future shares. So when that company when an institution values that company and invests, the trigger in that document converts at the same rate with a incentive, usually a discount of some sort.
Yep. Allowing everyone, both the founders and the people looking to put some money in early on, allowing the pressure to be taken off at that point about what this business is worth, how much equity they should get in return for their dollar, all of that, right? Because it's hard to predict that when you're at
Really
that
hard.
stage.
Yep.
And so,
honestly, it provides an opportunity for angel types or kind of everyday investors to invest in a company. Because before, just an enormous amount of paperwork. If you're trying to invest $100,000, the legal paperwork alone, this is decades ago or years ago, it just wasn't worth it. You couldn't paper it. But if you allow the institution to take care of that term sheet and all those terms that reside in that investment, then you can participate. So because you're not tied up in it's a 5-page agreement and you're leaving all the heavy lifting to the lawyers in the seed and Series A.
Yeah.
rounds.
Yep. Okay, so if you're talking to two founders and they're asking you for advice on, they've got what really looks like a great idea. They're confident in their ability to get enough of friends and family money to get this going, and they're about to be off to the races, so to speak. But you're giving them advice on kind of, both now, 6 months from now, 2 years from now, as they kind of work their way through this process. What are some of the things you definitely want to say to them?
I think it's never too early to start building relationships with investors, particularly if you have a top 20 list of firms that you want to work with for whatever reason. Maybe they're really well established in that category that you're in or that sector that you're in. It's never too early to start developing those relationships. Even if you're pre-revenue, just having those relationships is a great. You'll do yourself a favor because it just takes a lot of conversations with a lot of investors. And keep in mind, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of competing voices with especially VCs. It's just a lot. So I think building a network, even an advisory network of other industry or customers, especially in a SaaS type business, having those customers that can be a part of your fundraise, if you will, is really positive. So the other thing I would say is channel partners can be really, really good for an early stage company. It's often hard to get a channel partner because you don't have enough. It's almost not worth their time. But if you can find a complementary channel partner or a larger company that makes sense for you to partner with, that can do worlds for your business. It can result in early growth. It can result in an exit down the road. So I think really investing time to bring value to these early channel partners, not try to get something from them. I think that's a mistake. You're an early stage company. They know that you're early, and I think you bringing them value would go a longer way than trying to, see if they'll help you sell something.
Right.
So.
And by the way, can you define channel partner?
Sure. Channel partner is just it's an acquisition strategy, a customer acquisition strategy, which involves other companies. So, in other words, there's a company in your kind of vertical that helps channel customers to you. I think is how where the channel comes in. But they're sending you customers, so your acquisition costs go down. You're not paying to acquire those customers. The relationship is such that that larger entity, that larger company, that larger partner is sending you customers. Maybe it's a rev share, or maybe it's just a complementary relationship. Maybe you're bringing value to their customers. Maybe maybe it's mutually beneficial. But that would be a channel partner.
Yep. Okay. And let's assume one of those founders that you were giving advice to was a CEO. What are you telling him or her that, no matter what, like, here's the 3 to 5 things you've got to be focused on?
Yeah. I think being product obsessed is really important. Just really obsessing over the product. And because you have to have that product person on the team. I think that's really important. And just obsessing over your product. Make sure you get the product right. Understanding how people are using your product, how your customers are using your product. Why are early customers attracted to your product? Why is there a product market fit? Are you establishing a product market fit, or is that a false negative kind of thing, or a false positive? You say. So I think being product obsessed is really, really important. I think too, after the product, really before the product, or in line with the product, is finding the right team. So the CEO is responsible for, sharing the vision and like attracting a team. And I think attracting an A team, because A players attract A players, B players attract C players. So I think really finding that perfect team for this venture is really, really important. And that can be finding technical talent or finding the subject matter expert, the outsized person in that sector that is the perfect founder kind of market fit. Super important. And then too, I think, just making sure you have enough cash, I think is really, it cannot go, it's just hard. Making sure that you have enough cash in the bank to be viable, especially with a pitfall like COVID. I mean, there are a lot of companies who are well capitalized who ran out of cash quickly because, and not their fault. It's just an unforeseen bump in the road, and there'll be lots of those.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your thoughts on all that. I really appreciate it. That is, it's helpful, and I am much more familiar with the sort of what we were calling the lifestyle business, where you get some money together. It's your own money. You start something in cash flow and grow it from there. And that whole kind of venture back space is not something I'm very familiar with, but it's extremely common now, right?
Yeah, and I think the lifestyle business should not be undersold, honestly. Like, I think a lot of people have been attracted to this, the sexy kind of...
Right. I was going to say that, Yeah. It's new and flashy and kind of sexy, but it's not for it's not for every founder or founders, and it's not for every business model.
That's right.
Or product.
That's right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. Great. Well, I appreciate that. Anything else you want to touch on with the venture back capital versus lifestyle?
No, I don't think so. I think that covers it.
Okay.
There's lots to think through, and it can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But I think just focusing on building your company, revenue solves all problems.
Yes. Yes.
And
sales covers a multitude of sales.
Yes.
Yep. Well, thanks for coming back on, man. I really appreciate it. And I'm happy to hear BrightTrip is doing well, even with the pandemic. And because at this point, we're invested in it with you, man.
Yeah,
we've heard enough about BrightTrip on this podcast.
Your listeners are
no, the listeners are invested with you, man, for sure. So I hope that continues to do very well.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun doing it. That's for sure.
I'm sure. And by the way, I was going to ask you, you full-time now?
Full-time.
Full-time BrightTrip. But that only happened in the last several months, right?
That is recent. Yeah, I left my full-time job, which was hard to do.
Yeah.
About 2 months ago.
Okay.
A month and a half ago.
Yeah, congratulations. Yeah. So I'm assuming at that point, just as a founder who left your full-time gig, you're kind of surveying the landscape. You're looking at how this business is performing. Like, there's more knowns than there was 2 years ago and 6 months ago, and you're just seeing the track that it's on. You have some level of certainty there that gives you kind of the permission or the kind of the freedom to quit your day job, so to speak.
Absolutely, that's exactly right. Okay. So especially if you're trying to attract venture, like, you have to be full time. The expectation is that the entire team is full time. So that's where BrightTrip is now. We have enough traction. We have enough customers. We've sold enough courses. We have a model that is working for us, and we're ready to invest in that and press into that.
Yeah. All right, brother. Thanks for coming by.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
That was great.